Welcome back to the second part of a two-part series. Hopefully, as Farrell says, you're happy as he is right now. So in this second podcast, I'm going to highlight some of the factors that go into how we make decisions, what influences our decisions. So thanks for joining me again. We're focusing on consumer behavior, and this is basic psychology, okay? Psychology mesh with marketing, how we as marketers use information on our consumers through data and AI to drive social media marketing to influence consumer behavior. So the psychology of consumer behavior is really focused on how we make decisions. What goes into the motivation and the perceptions that allow us or enable us to make decisions. So when we look at the psychology of consumer buying or consumer decisions, they fall into three categories. The first being routine response behavior. So this is things that we buy or services that we purchase on a regular basis that we don't put a lot of thought into. These are generally convenience type products. And then products with a little bit of decision making. Key here is decision making. We're not just responding, going out and buying convenience type goods like bottled water or gum. We're spending a little bit more time on these decisions. And then extensive decision making. So how do we, there's three categories. How do we group these three together, right? So these three categories can be described in five factors, right? So number one, level of consumer involvement. Most important, right? This is the most important. Number two, length of time to make a decision. With a response, a behavior response, we're making immediate decisions. With extensive decision making, much more time involved in that. Cost, level of information search, how much time are we investing into the search? And then the number of alternatives that are out there. So when you look at these five factors, three or four of them can be measured, right? So when you look at level of consumer involvement, cost, information search, number of alternatives that we're searching up, a lot of this information is reflected in our search habits. So marketers are using a lot of psychographic information that can be ascertained from your Google search or your history relative to what type of content you're reviewing. All right, so let's break down and give you some examples of these three types of decisions. First of all, with a routine decision, this might be staples that you buy at the grocery store, bread, eggs, milk, whatever that is. Could be energy drinks, right? And or fast food, right? You put all things aside, like you might have a preference with fast food. You don't necessarily have to every single time think whether you're going to go to McDonald's or Burger King or Chipotle, whatever that is, right? So that would be routine. Then limited might be clothes or makeup, fall into that category. A little bit more time involved in it, a little bit more expensive as well. And now we get into extensive. So cars, boats, jewelry, RVs, campers, those types. A lot more time is involved in the decision making, right? So more involvement, more time, higher costs, more time searching out alternatives, and you're doing a lot more of an information search. Right, so the level of consumer involvement is number one, right? The number one determinant of buying decisions is how much time a consumer spends on investigating a product. So the level of involvement relative to searching. So it'd be searching, evaluating, decision making. That level of consumer involvement really is most determining when we look at those three different levels. So a lot of that information, as I stated earlier, is available through what we search, when we search, the number of alternatives that we're searching, right? So this is all psychographic information that's available to marketers. It's our IP address. It doesn't necessarily state our name, but marketers know, and marketers are able to take this psychographic information and create personas or profiles of their market. All right, so other factors in determining consumer involvement: your experience with the product, your interest in the product. So if you have previous experience, perhaps it's an energy drink, you drink Celsius, or it's Coke or Pepsi, whatever that is, that allows you to convert that into a routine decision. Also your interests. Again, searching, you're online, you're on your search engine, Google, and your interests are reflected on what you search, whether it's cars, motorcycles, fishing, hobbies you have, outdoor hiking, whatever that is, right? Your interests all come through in psychographic information. Other factors are negative consequences. So if you're going to suffer negative consequences, some examples of that might be financial, social, psychological. So financial would be like, oh, that's an expensive decision. If I make a bad decision, that's going to set me back. Social, psychological can also be reflected online, or it could be clothes, right? It has social trends. Maybe you're not following the trends that are out there, or you're following trends that are no longer fashionable. We're seeing today that financial risk is topping out. Consumers are continuing to spend beyond their needs based on credit card debt right now, which is at an all-time high. All right, so when we look at factors that affect consumer decision-making, we can categorize them into internal and external factors. So the internal factors, so they can be subcategorized into individual, sex, age, income, right? Some of those change. Age changes, income over time, or psychological, which would be our motivations, our perceptions, our lifestyle, how we perceive ourselves and our lifestyle, what our status, how we perceive ourselves as far as our status. And then we have external factors that sometimes influence our psychological standing, right? So these would be social, and that would be family and influencers, right? I would say influencers have, my opinion, more of an influence today from a social perspective. Then there's cultural. That's how we were brought up, right? Cultural values, our social class. Those two external factors, the environment that were brought up in, and that would be cultural, impact our consumer decision making. So both our social and cultural factors, they shape consumer behavior. They shape us psychologically. They change our perceptions, our lifestyle, or how we view ourselves, but they work together to shape consumer preferences and decision making. Thanks for joining me in this second podcast. This concludes consumer behavior. This is Coach Spielis. Make it a great day.